Shalom. I so This is the 2 weeks I have between quarters, and so I had a little extra time, and I was talking to some people, and um, this is one of the topics I started. Somebody asked me basically to explain the concept of parentification. And yesterday, the Daily by the New York Times had um, an interesting reporter talking about the effects of siblings on family members, and I just thought, you know what, rather than typing a bunch of things to somebody in individually, why don't I make a video where I explain these family dynamics, and hopefully it will be useful. Um, all the usual caveats. Human beings are complex systems, not just complicated, but complex. Lots of things are going on in psychology. We are trying to understand how exactly a human being functions. We learn amazing things, but we also have a lot of misconceptions, and there's a lot of disagreements. And this isn't an academic. Um, I'm not going to explain everything between Piaget and Erickson and everybody else. I don't know them myself, and frankly, um, there's just too much um, disagreement and wiggle room to be clear about this. But when you talk to um, clinicians and you talk to people who deal with families, there are certain things that I think have become perfectly clear to the more capable, let's say, therapists. I think pretty much everybody agrees on these things. And that includes the fact that, so what happens is young parents, they start raising their first kid. Um, that kid is going to learn a lot of things without the parents even realizing what they're teaching their kids. Human beings, unlike any other animal, um, we spend a lot of time developing. Certainly mammals, and we. So you can look at most mammals. The child starts um, walking almost immediately, like within minutes. Right? It takes us about a year to start walking, right, as human beings. The amount of development it requires to become a human being, and it's not through propositional teaching, right? You don't sit your child down and teach the child how to eat, how to do almost anything, right? They watch you closely, and that's where they get a lot of their behaviors from. Of course, there's also genetic components, etc., right? And so you have a young family with a first child, and what happens is that the parents pass on things from their culture, what they learned from their parents, for those around them, who they are, right? And this is the whole thing with nature versus nurture, right? How somebody is raised. And there is some evidence that the first child actually tends to be a little bit smarter, which may be, I mean, the person from the New York Times certainly seemed to think about it, it's not as clear as she made it sound. That may be because the parents, hello there. Yeah, by the way, Jason, this reminds me, this would be a good thing for me to continue talking with Rebecca and her father about. Um, um, But the so and if people have questions, frankly, if people do want to jump on, they're certainly welcome. Um, and we can discuss the topic. But so the child starts growing, right? And the parents are spending a lot of time on that one child. Well, the an, a child actually ends up learning a lot more from other children than they do from adults, because the stages of development are not optional. And if you take one thing away from what I say here, it is that the stages of development are not optional, right? You can't be a 5-year old who's a 20-year old and stay a 20-year old. And that is actually what happens with parentification. So siblings affect each other, they teach each other, children teach each other, right? But one thing that unfortunately sometimes happens is parentification. And in my internships at both the internships I did were at domestic violence shelters. Um, in that context, the number one problem we would see is parentification, especially among the children, but even among the adults. And really, when it comes to substance abuse, you get a similar sort of stunting as happens with parentification. So I guess I could start with describing it in substance abuse. What you can tell about a somebody who is, for example, an alcoholic, is you ask them, okay, when did you first start drinking? And they will say 9, they will say 12, they will say 15, they will say 20, right? um, and that will be the age at which that person will be stuck. Now, that doesn't mean that's the age that the person pretend thinks that they're at, right? So you have, what happens is when there is some sort of trauma in the development of a child, right? You have a 6-year-old child, that child gets traumatized. And this happens especially in parentification, right? Parents get divorced at the age of 6, right? And um, oftentimes the oldest child, not always, but oftentimes the oldest child becomes parentified, meaning that, let's say the child goes with the mother, right? And let's say there are 1 or 2 younger siblings. And especially if it's a young mother, what happens is the mother starts treating the oldest child like one of the parents. So you get a parentified child. Well, what does a parentified child do? It's a 6-year-old. The 6-year-old is trying to act the role of a parent, which means whatever that child imagines is the age of a parent, usually the age of their actual parent, right? So if the parents are 25, the 6-year-old is going to imagine that he's 25, right? If the parents are 35, he's going to imagine he's 35. Sometimes you can even have, especially this happens in communities where grandparents serving as parents is very common. Here in Los Angeles, it's very common in the African American community for grandparents to serve as parents. And so the oldest child imagines that an adult, they imagine the role of themselves in something like 40s, 50s, even 60s, right? And so you get a 6-year-old trying to act like a 26-year-old or a 36-year-old, right? And that's just the beginning of the trauma, because as the child grows older, they are skipping the natural behaviors and natural development. Like I said, the stages of development are not optional, right? They are not optional. And so what happens is you get a 6-year-old who's trying to be a 26-year-old who is now a 16-year-old. Again, you get an actual 16-year-old who at the age of 6 started acting like a 26-year-old. Okay? What they imagined adult behavior is like is a 6-year-old's conception of a 26-year-old. Well, a 6-year-old doesn't have a very good conception of a 26-year-old, right? They may have certain things they imagine a 26-year-old actually acts as, but they're a child. They don't understand that. And then that child, that 16-year-old child, and I've seen it so many times, especially at the shelter, right? You see 16-year-old who has developed to the age of 6 mostly, and this is where we sometimes imagine that children grew up fast. Again, stages of development are not optional, right? You don't get a child who's 6 and suddenly knows what it is like to be a 26-year-old while skipping the entirety of their teenage years and their teenage development. And so then you end up with a 16-year-old who's a 6-year-old who's trying to be a 26-year-old. And that starts causing some problems. But oftentimes, when you get a 16-year-old who's acting like a 6-year-old thinks a 26-year-old should act, that's oftentimes not a problem. That's actually like something pretty good. And you're thinking, hey, this is a great kid. And then the child eventually gets to be 26. And then you have a 26-year-old who's a 6-year-old who is trying to act like a 6-year-old understands how 26-year-olds act. And that's not horrible, but it's not functional, because a 26-year-old who's a 6-year-old's conception of a 26-year-old and has completely missed out on the development necessary for going through everything from those 20 years of development, has all sorts of emotional immaturity, has all sorts of not knowing how to deal with things that we get as we go through the various stages of development. And then you start getting someone who's actually older, right? And eventually you end up with a 36-year-old and even a 46-year-old or a 56-year-old who is a 6-year-old trying to pretend to be a 26-year-old. Now, to some degree, the person will develop, right? But the right thing, the way to do it is to actually help this person develop through the stages of development as best that they can, right? And like I said before, when we go back to the beginning, their family of origin, how they learned to behave, well, oftentimes especially when there's trauma in the family, and that trauma can include anything like divorce, it can include immigrating from one country to another, it can include any sort of substance abuse. What you end up with is that you can have very, very skewed and convoluted misunderstandings, which, if you want to actually get them to work well, right? Probably the best way to make it work is actually by role modeling and seeing good models, functional models, right? And that's one of the reasons why the oldest child is so important. And I mean, when you talk about the biblical model of the Bechorah, of the right of the firstborn, right? There is a double portion that the firstborn has, and it's real. It really is real. It guides the rest of the family. I mean, you can listen to the podcast from the Daily. It was very interesting. Not, I mean, not sure I would agree with 100%, but it's pop presentation of a very complex amount of information we have about human development, which is still growing. But when it comes down to it, you are you want to find role models that actually function, and you want to give children good role models, and you want to give yourself good role models. That's why I think this idea of saints and narratives of saints, and why we read biographies, right? It's so important. And especially when people come from families that have immigrated from one place to another, when there's been divorce, when there's been rifts in the family, the fact is, there's a reason why we have ended up with this focus on the nuclear family, especially in the United States, I think, and especially through our counseling therapeutic culture. We talk about individuation because individuation is important. And a lot of times when you have toxic family members, and you can have incredibly toxic family members, creating boundaries between and even walls between various family members can be very useful. And I guess I should talk about the difference between boundaries and walls. A boundary is a porous, it's like it's a wall with a door in it where you let things through. Whereas a wall is where you create a separation that is impermeable, right? And it's very important in our relationships to try to have boundaries and try to limit the number of walls that we make. Unfortunately, when there's a lot of toxicity on the other side of the boundary, sometimes the best thing you can do is create a wall, right? Because there's just so much insanity coming through. And this is another thing that's important to remember, is that sanity is not something that exists merely in our own skulls, in ourselves. Our sanity is something that we share in community with the other people who are with us, right? That is distributed cognition. There is no sane person who is sane by themselves in a world of crazy people. That doesn't function, because our sanity, our intellect, who we are, does not reside simply in ourselves. We imagine that it does, but it really, really does not. Who we talk to, how they think, has a real influence on us. I mean, you can look at the Asch conformity experiments and all that, but we are communal creatures, right? And so what to some degree has happened is there has been a therapeutic cutting off of people from toxic environments in order to help them, which and I think that's a lot of the feeling. If you have a marriage and the parents are of the husband and wife are interfering, it can be incredibly toxic and destructive of what could be otherwise a very healthy marriage. At the same time, When you have a community that actually cares and is have a positive influence, then it can help a completely broken marriage be much healthier and much better than it was. I hate to say it. I was talking to um, uh, uh, somebody I've known for a long time who the marriage had various problems. And um, through marital therapy, they had started reducing the influence of the mother in law who was causing all kinds of problems in the family. And um, the mother in law passed away. And I asked, well, what was the effect of that? And the response I got was, oh, it was the best thing in the world for our marriage. The best thing that, and sometimes someone's involvement, because they themselves are such a source of insanity and problems in your life, right? That getting away from them is the best thing you can do. And so building that wall is very, very important. But what you end up missing is that that source of support, that source of a healthy role model, healthy families, of a community that is supportive and gives good advice and reinforces uh, good um, um, ways of living and being with each other, right? And that's what siblings and cousins and an extended family, grandparents who are functional human beings. And I have to say, just because someone was at one point toxic doesn't mean that they necessarily will continue to be forever, and that people are mixed bags, right? And it's not clear that just because someone has some good influences, they're not they are not mostly toxic, or just because they have some toxic elements, they're not mostly a good influence. And really, I mean, this is one of the reasons why a good boundary where you allow people to be involved in your life in good ways while keeping them separated out in bad ways can be good. And people are difficult. People are very, very difficult to deal with. Wherever you go, you are going to recognize, to your great disappointment, that all of the people there are going to be human beings. Every single one. And as human beings, they are not going to be the caricatures of the evil queen or the good queen, right? They're not going to be the good witch or the evil witch. They are going to be complex characters with complexity, right? And um, so going through the stages of development, going through the being those various ages, right? Going from being 6 to being 7 to being 8 to being 9 to being 10 to being 11 to being 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. Those steps, none of those are optional. And so if you have a 26-year-old who you see is attempting to be a 26-year-old, but having real difficulty doing so. And sometimes it may simply be that this is somebody who was not given the opportunity, the chance to learn and go through those teenage years. And really, when they were 15, 16, right, everybody's like, oh, you're so mature. And that maturity was really parentification. And similar things happen with people who are addicts, right? There is nothing so common um, in dealing with alcoholics and other substance abuse addicts as talking to someone who's 40 years old who acts like a teenager, because that's when they started drinking and that's the age they're at. And while they're 40 years old, they are they are a 16-year-old, and sometimes they're not even trying to act anything other than their 16-year-old. Oftentimes when they become sober and they recover, they then become a 16-year-old's conception of a 40-year-old, because, hey, I'm 40, I have to act my age. But they don't know how to act their age because they didn't go through those stages of development, right? And sometimes that also comes compounded with the fact that they come from a family where they didn't see the stages of development, right? And so the greatest thing you can do is actually find role models and deliberately learn from them, right? And think about the stage of development. Think about the stages of development that you may yourself have tried to skip or have appeared to skip. And understand, hey, I am not capable of skipping, right? You can't just jump from a 6-year-old to a 16-year-old. And you certainly can't jump from a 6-year-old to a 26-year-old. And so if you see that sort of traumatic disjointment of the parentification in yourself or your siblings, right? And this is another key part, right? We are not atomized individuals. We are people who live in society and in community with other people. I would say that it is absolutely impossible for an individual human being to be to actually be an individual. I don't think it's physically even possible. But even if you believe that it is possible, you're talking about one person in a million, maybe one person in 1,000. You're not talking about the average person. The average person exists and functions in conjunction with other human beings and can only do so in conjunction with other beings. And I guess this is the final bit of what I would add is, me personally, I thought that when I was going to focus on my mental health, and maybe to some extent it was the right choice, I isolated and I moved off. And when there are toxic elements of other people, you can try to move yourself off and be you can try to move yourself off and try to take the toxic elements out, but that it's not going to give you the nourishment that you need as an individual. you need other people, you need your friends, you need family, you need role models, you need people of various ages. And this is one of the many reasons I think it is absolutely a huge, huge mistake to imagine that if I just have one child, I will be better able to raise that one child. Frankly, I think the minimum number of children is 4. That's just me. But even if you're not going to have those children yourself, cousins, neighbors, children need to grow up in groups with each other. And that staggering of ages between children, because it helps to move in stages, to learn how to be older, to be your correct age. You don't want a child who's young for their age. You don't want a child who's old for their age. You want a child who's developing with their age group, right? Um, and so, yeah, that was my little explanation of siblings, parentification, and child development. Um, went about 30 minutes. If there's questions or somebody wants to jump on, um, we can do that, or I can actually be good and go to bed on time tonight, maybe. I am going to run the clock and see if anybody joins, and while I go get some water, and then I will be back. Ha! I turned off the timer.
What's up?
Long time no see. How have you
Hold on
been?
one second. I still had it open on YouTube. I forgot about that. It's like, why am I getting all this noise stuff?
Aha. So, how are things in Colorado, Mr. Man?
Mr. Man. Good. Good. Things are good. I just got back. I actually had to go back to Tennessee again. So I just got back on it was Saturday. So yeah, it's good. Settling back in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's nice. I got a month. I think a month here before I gotta leave again. But the next thing is just a cousin's wedding, so it'll only be like a maybe 48-hour trip tops, which would be nice.
Yeah, I haven't actually done any of the planning for coming to your wedding.
I gotta do that.
Uh,
Well, let me know if you need anything. I mean, I think on the site there's like hotels and stuff that she put on there, and things like that. But I can
I
also
usually get an Airbnb because I'm probably gonna drive out,
yeah.
and I'm gonna bring Happy with me.
Nice.
Yeah, and hotels are usually kind of iffy
Yeah.
with dogs.
Well, so tomorrow's Thursday. Okay, so 2 days. Actually, we're supposed to be buying another house out here for a rental. So we might. It's been discussed that we might have extra room in that house. We got to try to get the rooms rented out as soon as possible, so we're not because we otherwise we can't afford it. Um, But I think if there is room in the house, it's probably going to be prioritized for Becca's friends when they come in, because I think she has more like single friends and stuff. So I don't know. I don't know how much room there'll be, but there might be room. But if that's the case, like I can let you know. I'll keep you posted on that because I think there's like the backyard on that one's fenced in and stuff, so it's actually good for dogs.
Oh, Happy is not the type of person to run away. The type of
Oh,
dog
that's
to run away. Yeah. Happy, would you run away from me? Happy?
oh,
Come on. She's
I
looking.
liked your monologue though. That was good. It's good.
Why, thank you.
Yeah.
Happy, say hi to Jason.
How old is Happy now?
Happy is 14.
Ooh, nice.
Happy is old. I think she's 14. Maybe she's 13. In any case, she's getting old, so she wakes me up every morning at 6 a.m. because she wants to go to the bathroom, regardless of what time I went to bed.
I understand that. I wake up to pee all the time.
I don't know what it is. I mean, I take her, I try taking her for a walk before we go to bed, and I figure that should do it, but like, nope.
So how's everything with you? How's LA?
LA's good. We had our little cult meeting yesterday, which was nice. Uh, David, Elijah, and Trey are getting an apartment together. Um, Andrew got a job. Uh,
Did you get any of them to get girlfriends yet?
no, actually, we're actually recently down one girlfriend.
No.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think I do. I know. I mean, I know Trey. What were the two people he's rooming with?
David, David, David Walker. I mean, uh, he was not so involved with my channel as much as the other channels. I'm
Okay.
sure you would know him. He would come on stream while he was painting a lot. I think I forget where he was. Was he living in Missouri at the time? Anyway, he decided to move to Los Angeles, and
Why?
since he's been here, he's been hanging around with my my little crew.
That's cool.
Yeah, and Trey and Andrew. Ooh, Orthodox Boomer Grandma. You still have never gotten back to me because Orthodox Boomer Grandma is actually a clinical psychologist with
Oh,
many
okay.
years of
What does that phrase even mean?
experience.
Like I mean, I know you talked about it, but is there a specific definition for that? Like a
Yes. So parentification
child
is
become a parent or something?
is when a yes, she did give it up. She did give it
Oh.
up. But I think part of the problem with the profession is the lack of integration with spirituality. And so Max and possibly my cousin and I, yeah, of course it's still all in your head. You're never going to get away with
She
it.
should come on here. Does she ever come on?
She never comes on. I
Why?
keep inviting her.
Come on here and explain this to me. I'm
Yeah.
currently going to therapy right now. It's not fun.
Yeah, and she has a PhD in psychology. So parentification, what happens oftentimes. So here, actually, I could pull up the the Wikipedia article and maybe actually learn something myself about it. But
Oh, we don't want to do that.
why would we learn anything?
Yeah, let's just speculate.
Yeah,
Make up
learning.
our own definition.
Why is this not adding to the stage? There we go. Parentification. Okay. Parentification or parent-child role reversal is the process of role reversal whereby a child or adolescent is obliged to support the family system
Yeah.
in ways that are developmentally inappropriate or overly burdensome. For example, it is developmentally inappropriate for even a very young child to help adults prepare a meal for the family to eat. Yeah, this is, I mean, again, Wikipedia, you have to take it for a thing. You want to have children learn to help with things, but they should not become responsible for it. And
Yeah.
oh, it is developmentally appropriate. I sorry, I misread that. Yeah, so yeah, but it is not developmentally appropriate for a young child to be required to provide and prepare food for the whole family alone, right?
Yeah.
And that's oftentimes the types of things that happens is you get a parentified child who's actually making sure that the other children are eating when the parents are just being incapable of doing their jobs. However, if the
Yeah.
task is developmentally appropriate, such as a young child fetching an item for a parent or a teenager preparing a meal, then it's not a case of parentification, even if that task supports the family as a whole, relieves some of the burden on the parents, or is not the teacher's preferred activity. Two distinct types of parentification have been identified technically: instrumental parentification and emotional parentification. Instrumental parentification involves the child completing physical tasks for the family, such as cooking meals or cleaning the house. Emotional parentification occurs when a child or adolescent must take on developmentally inappropriate emotional support roles, such as confidant or mediator for or between, right? Um, Parents or family members, and sometimes as parent figures to the younger children. So apparently, Melita Schmidenberg noted in 1948 that emotional deprivation could lead parents to treat their children unconsciously as substitute parents. Yeah, so the term
Okay.
comes from
Yeah.
Mnuchin, 1967.
Okay. I think I really liked how you made the distinction between boundaries and walls. I thought that was really good.
That's another, yeah. So, I mean, all of these things are parent alienation is more fun. Well, she went to sleep. I don't know what she means by parent
Oh.
alienation, but here, let's look up parent alienation.
I don't know. I probably can't hang out too long either though because I need to get to bed. But
Eh, so, yeah, we should probably actually talk privately one of these days, as opposed
yeah,
to
that'd be good. Yeah, I
me
know. I feel like I already shared stuff
asking
on here
you.
that I probably should have just shared privately. Where I'm like, I shouldn't announce this when live streaming, but whatever. Too late
Yeah,
now.
we do that. We do that.
Yeah, I think I just get comfortable because it feels like we're just hanging out. But
Well, we kind of are, but this is also the Fountain of Comfort channel.
yeah, yeah.
But if you get nothing else out of this stream, the important things are community is important,
Hmm.
and role models are important, and you cannot skip um, you cannot skip developmental stages.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I thought it was really good. Yeah, I do think it would be fun when you. I don't know. We got to make that happen when you get to talk to Becca's dad. It'd be fun to hear you guys dig into this stuff together.
Yeah, he's an MFT. He is an MFT. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a lot of good stuff to say about it. She was working on another episode, I think yesterday or something,
Mm.
to put together. Not that I mean, it's already pre-recorded. She did it in Tennessee or something years ago. She's just editing it. So then, yeah, I don't know, man. All this stuff, all this relational dynamics. Yeah, you can't exist alone, but it'll mess you up, especially once you start going to therapy. You're just like, holy crap, how do I escape any of this shit?
Well, I mean, you don't escape it. I mean, and that was part of the thing I was saying. Like, I thought I could, and a lot of people think by building walls and isolating, you
Yeah.
can make things better, but actually, it can make things a lot worse.
Yeah, it's just like hiding it, then it comes out sideways somewhere else. That's what I'm terrified about. And then that's kind of one of the main reasons I was started going to therapy because I just want to make sure I can clear things up before I get married and actually be a good husband. then all this stuff comes up, and stuff you're not really even expecting, and then stuff you've suppressed, and then stuff like, yeah, and it's just, yeah, it's weird. And then to not deal with it, or even stuff I thought I had dealt with, it's like, okay, I think I dealt with that in a healthy way, and I compartmentalized it, I put it here, but now it's like, now I'm unpacking it again. It's like, maybe I didn't deal with it the way I should have. I don't know. And it's just, yeah, but it's scary because like, if you don't do that, yeah, I don't know if it's just, you're just going to repeat it somewhere else, or it's going to come out in a bad way directed at someone you don't want it to.
There are no simple answers, and there is such thing as iatrogenic harm, which is when you try to fix something and you just make it worse by trying to fix it.
Mm, gotcha.
And it's a difficult balance, and you have to be pragmatic about it.
Yeah.
Like, how much time can I spend dealing with all the stuff?
Yeah.
And um, so I compare suppressed memories to scar tissue, right? And what you can do is you can cut into the scar tissue, but that doesn't mean you're not going to get worse scar tissue.
Yeah. Oh, gotcha. It's like scar tissue on your butt or something when you can't see it. And you're like, what the hell? Where's that? I didn't know that was there.
Right. And
Yeah.
you have to realize once you're digging into things like repressed stuff, um, your memory, human memory is not very good. And the more traumatic the memory,
Yeah.
the less accurate the memory. You
Yeah.
might have a very vivid memory of something. Like, so for me, one of the most traumatic things in my childhood was um, I thought it was one night that there was a bombing in Tehran, that like during the war there was bombing, and they shut off all the electricity at night, and we were using candle lights and sleeping in basically a bomb shelter. Right, it wasn't an actual bomb shelter, but it
Yeah.
was our best approximation of it. Um, and I remember it as being one night. When I finally had enough therapy that I could talk about it, and for the longest time, I would have the weirdest reaction to candles. Like, I would be like, I would freak out
Yeah.
around candles in ways that I myself didn't understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
That makes sense.
And when I finally had enough therapy that I could talk about it, I started talking to my mom about it, and she's like, "Oh no, that was 6 months."
Oh. Yeah, no wonder. Yeah. Do you ever do you know much about EMDR? That
I
almost feels like something like, well, I mean, I don't know hardly anything about it, but that feels like a weird, not weird, but like a body response, where you're like, you don't understand why, but you're just freaking out around candles. And I've heard, I don't know if EMDR helps with more of stuff like that or not. But
Yeah, I actually, I mean, this is the thing. I even went to a therapist who was supposed to do EMDR, but like she never did
yeah,
actually do the light thing,
gotcha.
and I don't know why. And I've talked to people who've been trained in EMDR, and it's like it's supposed to work well, but I have never actually seen it, and this is the
Yeah,
part of the problem with therapy is we get it's so rare that you get to actually see the therapeutic, like what's going on.
uh-huh.
Um, and so, yeah, I've heard really good things about it. I even went to a therapist specifically to get EMDR. We did many sessions, but she never actually did the eye movements.
Huh. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, and like my cousin, he does psychedelic assisted therapy, which a lot of people are talking about,
Yeah.
and I mean, it's important. I think there's a lot of people who talk about how good it is,
Yeah.
but um, this is part of the problem with the entire psychological enterprise. The We really don't have, and this is the reason why Fountain of Comfort, I think, is important. We don't have a psychological literature that any of us really trusts.
Mm.
It's been so politicized. It's been so perverted with all kinds of financial corruption and individual things that uh, there's a lot of distrust in, and there's a lot of um, yeah. So
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know. I was gonna start EMDR. We haven't really started it yet, but mine's just been just talk therapy right now, which I feel like is probably what my therapist specializes in. I don't know that the EMDR with him will end up being extremely helpful. Maybe it will be. I'm not sure. Time will tell. But
Mm.
even still, right now, it's like it's even some of the talk therapy, like it brings up stuff, and then it's like I said, it's which I think is good. I think when you know that's when it's working. When it's uncomfortable, it's almost depressing. It's kind of annoying. It's like you're just kind of unpacking all this stuff, and that's like, well, this is annoying. But I think the annoying part to me is there's a few things where I'm like, this just seems like unfixable. This dynamic I have, like just because it's with another person, and I'm like, I just can't. I don't think there's going to ever be any progress. So I don't really know how to work on that alone, I guess. Does that make sense?
So I
But
have to say group therapy is very difficult, very different from individual therapy, and it's very hard to find a good group.
yeah.
But a good group can give you the results of many years of therapy in one session.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there's answers, and that's the thing. It's like, I think there's answers. I think just, the answer you want is actually some sort of progress with that person and that dynamic and stuff. But it's kind of
Well,
sometimes it's a crapshoot, I guess.
part of the thing is, I mean, as a therapist talking individually, doing individual talk therapy,
Yeah.
like we are not allowed to say things to you like, hey, why don't you do this or why don't you do that, like give you ideas. And that's more coaching behavior, which
Yeah.
sometimes therapists fall into. I don't know, did you watch my discussion with Dr. Rossi from
Was that the old
yeah.
guy? Yeah, yeah. That was really good. I thought you did very, very well in that as well. Like it seemed like you were really prepared, had questions prepared for him or something. I don't know. The way you took that conversation was really good.
Oh,
It was
thank
really,
you.
you're welcome.
Yeah. But so with group therapy, when there's other people who aren't the facilitator, they can say things, they can ask questions that really we can't. And that's
Yeah,
why the group dynamic can be healing in all sorts of ways that individual therapy isn't.
that makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. 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 Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I got another topic I want to ask you about sometime, but it probably isn't time. But maybe you could do a different stream. It'd be a whole different subject. I'll text it to you or something.
I mean, we can. Also, we could just turn off the stream and just talk like adults privately.
We could do that. I don't know. Does anyone else want to join? I mean,
Nobody's.
I do have to go, but I can't. I should
Oh,
have
you
stayed
have to
much
go
longer.
anyway.
Yeah, I probably got to go to bed because it's after 12 already, and I got to get up and work. And
I should go to bed
maybe,
too.
maybe tomorrow I can actually catch the Bible study. It's always seems like I always get caught up right before it starts. But
Right, Thursday morning Bible study. This is
yeah,
true. Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
All
I
right,
am going to end the stream.
all right.